My name is Nicholson, and I'm a retired teacher from the Cedar Rapids Community School District. I started out in special education many years ago, but then I moved into technology, and when I left the district, I was a technology integration facilitator. I did a lot of staff development and worked with teachers and students, and technology has always been a passion of mine, and so has coding. And now there's so much emphasis on the importance of teaching students coding, not that they're all going to be programmers, but because of the value of computational thinking, planning, designing, evaluating, reassessing, debugging are all great skills for students. So I got involved in Scratch about 8 years ago, and I think it was maybe about 3 years ago, Scratch Junior came out on just the iPads, which I thought was too bad that they can't do it for Androids, but now they've made it for Androids too. And it's a nice scaled back version that I think is just wonderful for young students, and I'll mention that several times during this. And so I've continued being an advocate for coding in the classroom. I do organize a Scratch Day every year in Cedar Rapids at our Grantwood AEA, and I recently started being a mentor at a coder dojo that we have in Cedar Rapids, where two Saturday afternoons we have different stations. We might have like a 3D printer, we might have somebody doing app creation, hour of code, and I usually do Scratch, and this Saturday I'm going to add Scratch Junior to the mix for that too. So I'm really passionate about Scratch, and I like to stay involved with it. And two of my helpers, as I've been learning it, are my grandson and granddaughter, who are 6 and 7 right now. They are fun to show Scratch to and give me an idea about how it can be used with students. How many of you have used Scratch Junior? That was the next question. I couldn't decide which order to go, but so none of you have used Scratch Junior yet? Okay, good. You'll probably get interested in it. How many of you have used Scratch? Okay, if you've used Scratch, you've kind of got an idea about putting the blocks together. How many of you have done hour of code activities with Codeorg with your students, like the Frozen? Okay, so those things are going to give you kind of a background, and for those of you that have never tried it, I'm going to be talking about it and showing examples of it. If you want to get to the Scratch website, you can do that. This PowerPoint is available on the resources for iTech, but you don't need to download it now or link to it if you want, but you might want to go to the Scratch website Scratch Junior website as we're going along. If at any point you have questions about this, feel free to stop me and ask a question about it. Let's see, are most of you like K2 teachers? No. Some are, some aren't. Media specialist, okay, tech specialist. Because sometimes people back in your building might be asking about running it and stuff, so hopefully if that information comes up, I can give you some answers or some resources. What is Scratch Junior? It's basically an introductory programming language for ages 5 to 7. I started it with one of my grandchildren when they were 4. So, you know, it's a little flexible there. It depends on how you're using it and how comfortable they are with tablets, and they're usually comfortable with tablets at age 4. It was inspired by Scratch programming, and it's a free app for Androids and iPads. And if you want to, I don't know if I should be encouraging you to go ahead and download it, but during the conference time, if you want to download it on your tablet, feel free to do that and play with it. And you can, it's new, but you can use it as, there's a Chrome app for it for Chromebooks, but it comes kind of with a little disclaimer. This version was built from the Android version. We have had to remove some features such as sharing due to differences between Android and Chrome OS. The sharing isn't a big part of Scratch Junior. There's an option where you can share something you've done and then it gets sent by email. Usually, Scratch Junior is going to be pretty much tablet-based for students. Scratch Junior is a collaboration between the DevTech Research Group at Tufts University, the Lifelong Kindergarten Group at the MIT Lab, and Playful Invention Company. And I brought this quote in from their site. As young children code with Scratch, They learn how to create and express themselves with the computer, not just to interact with it. In the process, children learn to solve problems and design projects, and they may develop sequencing skills that are foundational for later academic success. They also use math and language in a meaningful and motivating context, supporting the development of early childhood numeracy and literacy. With Scratch Junior, children aren't just learning to code, they are coding to learn. Just to give you an idea of some of the differences between Scratch and Scratch Junior, Scratch is almost always web-based. You can download a version of it and use it locally on a computer, but it's almost always web-based. Scratch is tablet-based, so a student would have to go back to the same tablet to be creating. If they're sharing tablets, you have to kind of think about that, because all the projects get shared. They could save it with their name, but you know, with young kids, you have to talk about not messing with somebody else's stuff. That's something to be aware of. In Scratch, you can share to the web, and you can collaborate with students all across the world if you have a Scratch user account. Scratch Junior, the only sharing is through email, so there might be, like the teacher might email all of the projects of a certain project to herself so that she can look at them on one device. There's not a lot that's done that I'm aware of through the sharing, just more that it's a nice little feature. Scratch is available in more than 40 language options. It's used in over 150 countries. Scratch Junior right now is 7 language options. And just a couple months ago, it was only 2, English and Spanish. So I would look for Scratch Junior to keep adding more languages. And what that means is all of the text, support text, is in that language if you select it. Scratch supports online collaboration. Scratch Junior, there isn't online collaboration, but students can still collaborate with each other. And in Scratch, there are 10 categories of blocks, the little programming units that you click together to make a script, to make the computer do what you want to do, are called blocks. 10 categories in Scratch and 6 in Scratch Junior. A little bit simplified. So at the Scratch site, it gives you information about downloading it. You can go to the App Store, Google Play, and I'm not sure why, Amazon, but they've got that listed there too. They also mention, and I'll bring this up again, there's the official Scratch Junior book is in Spanish and English, and it's available at No Starch Press. And I'll bring that up again at the end. No Starch Press is a great resource for technology books. They have a lot of them on Scratch, and if you subscribe to No Starch Press, they will let you know when they have specials. And so quite often I'll buy these books at 50% off. Plus, if you buy a print version of the book, you automatically get the e-versions, and they let you have all of the different formats of the e-versions, and you can download it as often as you need it. So you can have it on more than one device. So I really like that about their books. I want to show you an introductory video that kind of gives you an overview of Scratch, and then we're going to look at the components of the Scratch Junior website. And I'll probably have to restart this, I apologize.
Hi,
It is going.
I'm Marina Berz. I'm one of the co-creators of Scratch Junior. Scratch
Can you
Junior
hear
is
that?
a programming language. You can make anything you want. You can make a story, an animation, a game. We created a series of tutorials to help you get started, the beginning, the first steps. But really, Scratch Junior is about you making anything you want. Have fun.
Welcome to the Scratch Junior Activities Guide. This short video will help you use the activities to create projects in Scratch Junior. First, open your app and tap the Home button. Create a new project by looking for the blank page in the top left of your screen with the blue add symbol. All activities ask you to start by selecting a new background. The small thumbnail of the landscape in the top of your screen takes you to the background library. When you've found the background that looks like the one in your activity, simply tap it twice to select it. Some activities also require you to change your character. All of your characters are listed on the left of your screen. To add a new one, click the Add button. Scroll through the character library to find the one that you need. When you've selected it, just as with the backgrounds, you tap twice. To get rid of the character you no longer need, locate it in the left side of your screen, tap and hold until you see a dancing X. Tap the X to erase it. Some activities also require you to move your character to a starting position. Simply tap and drag the character to where you want it to be on the screen. Finally, all activities require that you make a program for your character. Use the color-coordinated buttons on the left to locate the blocks that you'll need. Drag blocks down from the palette onto the white canvas area. You can use more than one block and connect them to make sure that they're all part of the same program. Finally, some blocks have a special number field that will need to be changed to finish your activity. Tap the number, and you'll see a keypad. Tap the new numbers that you need to complete your activity, and then tap anywhere on the screen to save it. When you're ready, tap the program to see how your character will move. Now you're ready to get started using the activities to create projects with Scratch Junior. Ready to try? You can open the first activity on the Scratch Junior website called Drive Through the City.
We'll look at that again.
When you've explored Scratch Junior, you may want to make your own activities. You're only limited by your imagination. Take it from some of our experts.
We're learning about swimming, so I wanted to do a swimming Scratch Junior thing. So I put the message on and then I pressed it on the ball so my son would get to the ball, and then I put it up and then I got 10, then we tried it and it worked. And also made them do crazy stuff. So there's like a wizard making a tornado go. And the tornado is over here. And then there's a baby and the cat are playing soccer. And then the old grandma is chewing. And it goes, and she goes up and down.
So that's Scratch Junior. Yeah, just a little overview of it. Oops. I think I'll X that out for now.
Find the Scratch Junior app.
Yep. It was cute, the kids, I know it's hard to see what they were doing or to listen to them, but I got a kick out of the ones that just wanted to make things go crazy, because that's part of when kids first exploring with it. They're kind of looking at it and they're trying to play around and do things. The beauty for teachers is at the Scratch website, they have some structures in place so that you can help them learn and do certain activities, and they also have some ties to the curriculum. On the Scratch Ed website, when you're there, across the top there are tabs About, Learn, Teach, and Donate. This was done through a Kickstart fund. I think it's kind of great that they did that. But on the Learn tab, there is information provided about the interface, Scratch, what the kid sees when they're in a project, the paint editor, the blocks descriptions, and then there's some tips and hints. The interface guide you can download as a PDF, and you can print it out if you want to, and then it tells you what each of the numbers does. Or if you look at it on Scratch, it's interactive. So if you're not sure, for some reason, I had a hard time figuring out how to name the projects. When you're done with a project, you can go to the home over there, which has the 1, but then it was just saying project 1, project 2. And so I did have to get in here and look at it. If you click on 10, it takes you to another screen where you can share your video and you have a place to, your project, and you can name it. So the guide is very, very helpful. And the kids like to learn by experimenting, but sometimes you want to find an answer for them if they're trying to search and make something happen. There's a paint editor, so let me move back here. All of the sprites or the characters that are in the project are on the left, and she showed how you could add characters by clicking on the plus. There's some really great characters in there. There also are some characters that have no face, so you can use the camera tool in the paint editor and put the kids' faces in it. And kids have a lot of fun with that. You can put your face in too if you want to, or anything basically. But that's how you get to more pictures over there. The background that they mentioned, number 5, if they have an activity guide, it usually starts them out with getting the background first, but they don't have to do that. Now, if you are interested in more characters, students can draw their characters. My grandson was trying to do a tornado, and he didn't see that there was one in there, so we kind of worked together to draw a tornado. So then he decided he was going to draw a tsunami and a hurricane, and he's really into weather disasters and things like that, but they can draw their things in there. There's also PBS Scratch Junior. That's an app that's free. It works totally the same as Scratch Junior, but it has not all the PBS characters in it, but it's got Wild Kratts and Peg and Cat and a bunch of the characters from different PBS shows, and the background's in there. So that gives them a little bit more option. Word Girl was one that my granddaughter wanted to have World Girl flying around in her project. So the paint editor lets you either edit the sprite, you could change the color of the cat, you could paint things on the cat, and then the camera tool is the one you would use if you want to have your own face on it. You'd have to pick the graphics that have a little circle for the face, click on that, and then you can have that graphic have your face. Or you can just totally make a new sprite. You can make it from scratch, basically. The blocks descriptions, there are triggering blocks. These are the blocks that start an action for a sprite. Every sprite has their own code for it. And you can copy code from one sprite to another. You don't have to actually recreate it all, but something has to start an event. So the green flag is a very common one. If you've done Scratch, you're familiar with that. Start on bump. You could have it so if 2 of the sprites touch each other, you have 2 move blocks in, they bump, something happens. Tap on a character. If you do a little tap on them, they might do the action. And then there's send a message. One sprite can send a message to another sprite. When that sprite receives that message, they do something. So there are different events that can trigger different actions in Scratch. There are motion blocks, and these are very visual. They look very similar to the ones in Codeorg if you've used that. I like these because sometimes kids have trouble with right and left, so they can easily see which direction the character would be moving, and it tells you what they're doing here. You can input different numbers, and the background, or the stage area, is actually divided up like a grid. So you can pick the grid overlay, and kids can see the grid, so when they are moving, they know how far to move. In Scratch, sometimes it's like 200 gets you across the screen. In Scratch Junior, it might be more like 15. I forget what how many squares it's divided into. I can check that later too. There's a go home button. Wherever you put your sprite on the screen, that's the place that they'll go home to if you want to use the go home button. And you can always change that. There are some look blocks. This is where you can have like a little cartoon cloud come up where you would say something. There's a block to decrease the character size, fade, increase, return or reset the character, and then fade in. There's fade out, fade in for hide and show. There are sound blocks, only 2 of them. It's not very many, but in a way, I can kind of see it. There's the pop. That's the default sound in there. Any other sound the student has to record, but tablets have their built-in microphone, so they can do that. I would have liked some more sound choices, but then when you think about it, sometimes they just play around getting sounds in. If they know a sound that they want, they can try and get it or do it. Then there are some wait, some control blocks. You might have a character wait before they do something. One character might do something right away, and the other one might wait, so that they're not doing it at the same time. There's a stop that stops the characters, all the programming scripts for that character. There's a set speed, and it's got a little drop down so you can do different speeds of it. And then there's the repeat block, and you can repeat an action a certain number of times. That's a good one too if you're trying to get them to figure out, how to make a square, have their character walk a square, and then they can put in the steps, and then they can try a repeat block. And then there's an end block. It just says end of the script for that character. There's a go-to page, and depending on how many backgrounds you have, you would have that number of pages. And this is my grandson's favorite new block, the repeat forever block. He was so excited when he found that one, because I hadn't showed it to him, but he found it, and so his tornado kept going and going, and he was fine with that. Then there's a section that has tips and hints, and all of these can be watched as a video. So it shows you how to do it. It shows you making, renaming, and deleting projects. Because at some point, that screen could get overwhelming at the beginning. Mine already is. I got all these projects that aren't named, and then that have numbers. So at some point, you might want to get rid of some or rename them. And then there's character animation using Scratch blocks. There's another good video there at that site. The Teach tab provides activities, curricula, and assessment for Scratch Junior. Under Activities, you'll find the Scratch Junior intro, which we just watched, and several sample activities. And I think I went out of the Scratch site. I'm going to go back to the Scratch site real quick here. And if you want to be on it, you can too. So, just a moment. I try to do as many screenshots as possible when I'm planning ahead, because I never know what the network is going on. I shouldn't have said anything. This worked fine for me yesterday, but oh well. We'll see if I can get connected. If not, this will work too. So all of these, you can download the PDF too. It's a one-page document, so you could laminate it, put it in a sleeve or whatever. And it has it's kind of introducing little bits at a time. The drive across the city, they've got to pick a background and a character and use a motion block to make the car drive across the city. And that was kind of what they showed. So that's just a real basic one. And then use the speed block to speed up or slow down a character. In the run a race, you have 3 animals in there. And all of these, you have a basic activity, and then there's ideas for how they could expand or continue with it. And this is what the drive across the city card looks like it. And there's some things at the bottom, like how would you make the car go only halfway across? And then what would happen if a wizard, a dragon, or an elephant appeared on the sidewalk? Under curricula, you'll find block images and downloadable curriculum guides for an animated genre, playground games, and literacy and math. The block guides are kind of nice because they're big. So those, again, could be printed off and laminated to save. Each guide contains detailed instruction, including objectives, resources, and a tentative schedule. And they tell you exactly what blocks you would be using in this, what the objectives are. Under assessment, you'll find two types of student assessments. They have something called Circle the Block assessment, where you have just a picture of different blocks, and they circle the one. You have some projects that you show them, and then they circle the blocks that would be used in the program. They don't have to know the order or anything, but they figure out which blocks would make that project work. And then reverse engineering. In this one, students view a Scratch project and then reconstruct the scripts of the project using pre-printed blocks. So they try to figure it out after they watch it, and they do have to kind of figure out the order of it. Some good resources for doing Scratch. I highly recommend the Scratch Junior website, which I've been showing. It's just, I mean, it's great. It's got, I've downloaded everything from that and plan to use it. Code.org is a good site for teaching computational thinking, and I'll show you some of the screenshots from that in just a moment. It's nice to have the kids have some idea of the concepts behind programming, and so that they don't think of Scratch Junior and Scratch as just playing, that they understand that there's planning involved. If you are on Code.org and you start with Course 1 is designed for students, very young students, even students that might not read. They start teaching the concepts of, planning and what an algorithm is for kids. So that can give you a nice basic background that you might have before you start doing Scratch Junior. Some schools do an hour of code in December. That's another way to get things started with the kids. But you might, it's totally free. Code.org is totally free. You can create a teacher account. You can set up your classes. You can enroll your students in the program. You can watch them. They also have at Code.org, they have what they call, I'm thinking offline, but that's not how they phrase it. But they have activities that don't require a computer. Like you might have cards printed up that look like arrows, and you would program how to, tell a student you're going to program another student so that they can walk down to another classroom. So they have to think how many steps and figure that out and do the programming then. I think it's unplugged activities, that's what it is. It gets their mind thinking about programming, but you don't actually have the computer to do it. PBS Kids Scratch Junior, if you go to, just Google PBS Kids or you go to this link, they have the download that you can get of it. And then also at YouTube, I have a playlist of lessons that people have done on Scratch Junior because I found that was kind of interesting to see that. So here's the Scratch Junior website, which we've been looking at pretty closely. And I would recommend at the bottom of the first page on the Scratch Junior website, you can join the mailing list. And you might want to join that because then you would get information about updates on it. And you could even maybe find out what other people are doing with Scratch Junior. Here's what Code.org looks like. And if you sign in, like I said, you can sign up for free. One thing that they've changed recently, and I didn't realize this until recently, and this would affect your use of it, is they want an acceptable use policy for students. A lot of schools do that automatically, but let's see. I'm going to read out the whole thing to you. When registering an account for a student under 13, you will be asked to confirm that your school has a parental consent for the collection of the student's personal information for the use and benefit of the school, including educational programs such as Code Studio. For some places that might not be a problem, but just be aware of that they've changed that now. So if you decide to enroll some students in Code.org, and it's good to do as much PR with parents ahead of time. If they have no idea what it is, you could have a Code.org night at your building or an open house for it and show them. We have a lot of parents that come to the Coder Dojo that we do in Cedar Rapids, and so that's nice because the parents come with them and then they see what Code.org is. So this is what a teacher's class might look like, and it shows the sequence of the course, and it tells you how many lessons there are in each stage. And some of the lessons just take a minute or two. They don't take too long to run. And then they also have a lesson plan for every activity on here, and they tie it into standards, Common Core standards, and tech literacy standards. And you can view the teacher, you can view the information as a student or as a teacher. So students can check on their own project progress too. And this is an example of the start of a lesson. It's an unplugged lesson on happy maps. So they give you an overview, a teaching summary, how to get started. If you ever get the chance, have any of you taken Codeorg workshop? Very, very good. They're free, and you get really good materials from them, but you can also download all of their materials from their site. And at Cedar Rapids, the Nubo Co. and the Coder Dojo are now partners with Code.org. So anybody in the Cedar Rapids area, they're going to be able to offer those classes, those courses. This is what the PBS Kids Scratch looks like. It's a little bit flashier than the other Scratch. Like I said, it does the same thing as the other Scratch, but it's got the different characters in it. So you have your start, you have your how-to that has tutorials, and then you have the different characters. So you can scroll down, you select one, and then you click on the green check mark. The paintbrush is if you want to edit your sprite, add things to it, change the color, anything like that. And then they have a lot of different backgrounds, and some of them you might recognize from different shows on PBS. And they have a lot of story starters. So you can go in and watch a project, and then you could start it and add to it yourself, or your students could. I can see where this might be powerful, doing it as a whole group, to introduce Scratch to them. The only thing is that sometimes it's hard to show what you're doing on a tablet on a big screen. There are some ways around it. If you've got a document camera, that's perfect for showing it that way. That might be a good way to teach. And then here's the list of the videos, and I've got a link to it. There's a Scratch activity guide, Scratch lesson 1, moving games using Scratch. I looked at several. There are a lot out there, and as you're aware, YouTube has a lot of stuff that's really good, and it has a lot of stuff that's not so good. So I found a few that I thought were really good, about 11 videos here. And this is what the official Scratch book looks like. This is well designed. It is very clear. In fact, you could even show it to a lot of students, and even though there's text in it, they have diagrams that are really good about showing what to do. And at the end of each chapter, they have math connections and language arts connections for ideas of what you could do to expand or continue. Like I said, the grid, when they're moving, when students are moving, they have to kind of think about how far do they want their character to go to get to a certain point. So you're getting counting on, you're getting adding, and then you can get into some other things like what would be halfway and how to figure that out. So there are a lot of good reasons for using it, and it would integrate into the curriculum. Also, it aligns pretty well with the new ISTE standards. ISTE updated their standards this year, and I remember when they first came out with their standards, it was all on basic operations. This was quite a long time ago, knowing how to save things, and now they keep evolving. So there's standards focused on digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, global collaborator, and empowered learner. But one thing they say at their site is that computational thinking is vital to raising levels of achievement. And the computational thinking, I've talked about that throughout. I want to read a brief description of that. Computational thinking is a thought process involved in formulating a problem and expressing its solution in such a way that a human or a machine can effectively carry it out. And I think that's kind of important to let students know, even the little ones, that that's what they're doing. They are coming up, they're figuring out what they want to do, and they're actually teaching the computer how to do their program. And I apologize for going so fast on this. I wanted to show more on the web, but let me go back and see if I'm connected now. Otherwise, I would like to take questions. Nope, sorry about that. I'm not gonna keep you here at that. I just want, at this point, I've kind of gone through how you can get Scratch, how you might use it. Do you folks have any suggestions on using Scratch after hearing this, or any questions that I haven't covered? How many of you have a pretty fair number of tablets available for young students? Some do and some don't, okay? I would recommend that whenever possible, try to partner with another teacher, another class, and remember that you don't have to have every student on a device to do this. It's fun to have them collaborate. The speaker that was here earlier talking about teaching young children, she used the term driver and, it wasn't driver and navigator, because that's driver and passenger, yeah. Code.org uses driver and navigator, and so I kind of like the navigator idea, because then one student is giving input but not touching, and the other student is touching. So I would strongly encourage that type of activity, because kids really do like working together, but it's very hard sometimes to have one person taking over from another one. So I hope if you have any questions at all about anything in this, or want some suggestions on implementing coding in your classroom, there's my email. Feel free to email me, because I like hearing about how people are using this. This is something that I haven't seen at too many buildings yet. I've seen a lot of buildings start to implement Code.org, and a lot of them start to do Scratch, but I think this will fit nicely in the K2 classrooms. So, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can ask now or come up here.